This is Mazatlan on the west coast of Mexico. With our guest star Lee Marvin, we'll travel to this fascinating town with its old world flavor for some of the greatest deep-sea fishing to be found anywhere in the world. Searching for marlin and sailfish, Lee and his crew experience an exciting adventure in the deep waters off Mazatlan's coast as they battle with some of the toughest big game fish in the Pacific Ocean. An experienced fisherman who has traveled to many parts of the world, Lee Marvin brings the same kind of concentration that he displays as an actor to his exciting hobby of big game sport fishing.
Finally, we pulled them in close to the boat, but we still had a battle on our hands. If they managed to swim across each other and foul up the lines, we could lose both fish. We finally landed them. Two big sails weighing in at about 110 to 115 pounds apiece. Ah, we felt great. Nothing like tying into those big sails off of Mazatlan. And like a couple of Monday morning quarterbacks, we got a big kick out of going over every move we had made. For 7 fish caught in a period of just 6 hours. After unloading our gear, Al and I stopped by the dock to admire our catch. A most satisfying end to a great fishing trip. As I said before, 6 hours, the best fishing I've ever had. Yeah, it looks like Mazatlan has a new friend.
Outdoorsmen, hunters, riders, and fishermen all, and he loved their company. Every year, Lee took Pam down to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia to fish for marlin. He'd fished all his life. Black marlin were the ultimate challenge. It took 4 hours and more to fight and land one of these 1,000-pound monsters. It was a mystical thing with Lee. He wanted to connect to the deep.
He says, "You want to know what life is all about?" Well, yeah. That's what I'm doing here. That's why I do what I do, to keep pursuing that question.
You know, it's that old Hemingway line. You know, for the first 5 minutes, you think you have the fish hooked, and then after that, you realize that he has you hooked.
He says, the last time I was down in Australia, off the Australian Barrier Reef, we were hunting for the big one, he says. And one day, there it was. And we all knew this was the one. The fin came up and it was the one, the biggest one ever. So we wait. I get in a chair and I've got the rod in my hand, and he came up behind it, took a swipe, took another swipe, charged it, and then after that, nothing was like what it usually is. He says, a marlin, a big black marlin, will run, it will sound, it will cut to the side, it will leap, it will do something, but it won't do what this one did. It just hung there. It didn't move. I could pull with all my might, and he would come a little bit forward. If I released any pressure at all, he would pull back to exactly the same position. He hung there like that for 45 minutes until my arms were steaming hot dying blood until my arms were incapable of holding the rod anymore. And at a certain moment, suddenly there was a gigantic lurch, a tug, and he was gone. At that point, my arms were so tired I couldn't even hold up the fishing rod. So they fell on my side, and the crew had to take it out of the holster. I went up on the foredeck and I cracked a beer and let them reel in the line. A little later on, one of the crewmen comes up and says to me, "What'd you think of what was on the end of the hook?" Another crew member goes to the ice chest and opens up this humongous ice chest, and he takes out the eye. The fish had foul hooked himself and had to make a decision between saving his eye and saving his life. And that, said Lee, as he showed me the picture, is what life is all about. You know, the great Marvin, the great Marlin, you know, the big one that gets away. He got away with it.
That was the Marlin you caught, wasn't it?
Yes, that was. That was actually a world record
For women?
for women.
For quite a while, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And is this the biggest Marlin that Lee caught here?
Actually, no, it wasn't the biggest. It's one of the bigger ones, though. But, you know, he really built this whole room just to house this fish.
And look at the menacing way he's looking down at us.
Yes, I see that.
Marvelous
Wonderful picture.
Of
Yeah,
Lee from
Lee.
Liberty Valance.
Liberty Valance.
Yeah.
It's the timeless battle once again. Man and fish. 2 knights jousting across an arena of blue-green sea. Like any great game fish worthy of its reputation, black marlin have a bag full of tricks to outwit the angler. Unique in the fish world, they can literally regurgitate their stomachs out, a defense mechanism that usually throws the bait. Though there's marlin off the reef year-round, the peak season runs from August into December, spring on the Great Barrier, when the winter seas calm and the warm currents sliding down from New Guinea trigger the marlin's feeding cycles.
Outside of the Lizard Island reef area. Some of these are quite spectacular. You'll see in this particular shot the crew have been doing some underwater filming. When the fish is subdued alongside the boat, held on the trace, the crewman goes below with a camera and takes the shots in this way, and they're really quite spectacular. Now the fish has been tagged and released. In this case, the marlin, which is not a particularly large one, is being held close to the boat, and consequently you can cause them to turn over, and that's a particularly spectacular one, and this is black marlin fishing really at its best. The water here is deep blue. The sea temperature is frequently about 85 degrees, and this is the breeding ground of the giant black marlin. There is no other place in the world where black marlin can be seen in this manner, where they're so plentiful, relatively, and where you can take pictures of this type. The crewman here is holding the wire quite close to the boat. It's a very dangerous operation, because if the wire gets caught on his arm, it could pull him in and do a lot of damage. They do require both skill and a certain amount of courage to handle them in the way they do. The black marlin is renowned as probably the strongest and best game fish in the world. The boat is, of course, used to manoeuvre to get the fish in the correct position so that the angler in the chair can handle him, and periodically you see where the boat has been manoeuvred back close to the fish so that he can be taken on the trace. Of course, 95% of all these marlin are tagged and released. The only time that one is kept is if it is a record, or if a mount is required, or occasionally in a tournament. That's the angler, always proud when the fish has been subdued and released. Of course, the black marlin don't always fight on the surface in this manner. These are just shots that are taken at that particular part of the fight. At times they'll go down several hundred feet, and very difficult to force to the surface again. They just stay down there and dig their head in and make a very hard fight for the angler. Here you see the marlin coming from down deep up to the surface, makes a jump and then often right down again. Sometimes when they are running on the surface, jumping clear of the water, that it is called greyhounding. This particular fish has been partly subdued and is not able to jump quite clear, but is nevertheless pulling line off the reel. Sometimes when they're close to the boat in this manner, they will embed their bill in the side of the boat. Quite frequently happen. In that case, you can see the bait which the marlin took, is hanging loose on the trace outside of its mouth, but the hook is of course embedded in it. This is a dolphin fish, beautiful eating fish, and this is a skipjack tuna, sometimes called the watermelon fish for the colours that they show when they're freshly caught. This fish is greyhounding. That is what I was talking about. It was hooked by Alf Wadham on a 30-pound breaking strain line and jumped some 20 times. The camera only caught some of the shots, but it was eventually landed. It was a very good catch. Many of these shots are of course repetitious, but they are a collection. That was a particularly good one. A collection taken from films that I had made on many trips up to Cairns and Lizard Island. Alf Wadham and I first fished with George Bransford in 1966, caught our first marlin up there, and we fished almost every year until well into the 1970s. I fished for many years in the later period with John Johnson, who has been a very successful angler, the only man in the world to have caught 4 species weighing over 1,000 pounds in weight. Many of these shots have been taken by members of the crew. It has not been possible for me to handle the camera while I was in the chair, and so it was either a case of waiting until John or Alf was making a capture, or one of the crew would take a picture. On one trip that John Johnson and I had in the mid-70s, we caught 53 marlin, of which we tagged 51, over a period of 17 days in all, and included in that were a number of fish that went over 1,000 pounds in weight. The largest in that trip was an 1,148 pounder that I caught, which won the Cairns Centenary Tournament, Black Marlin Tournament, and was the first 1,000-pound fish to be caught in a tournament anywhere in the world. In recent years, the numbers of fish, of course, have declined with heavy commercial fishing. Had the effect of reducing the numbers, but it is still the best fishing ground in the world today. Most of these marlin are between 400 and 800 pounds, with the odd 900 and rare 1,000-pounder among them. The males are the smaller of the species. They rarely go over about 350 pounds in weight, and all the larger ones are females. A large female can have as many as 15 million eggs, and of course the number who survive out of all the eggs that are laid is quite small. Now this is not a very good picture, but it shows a whale shark that we came close to. It was over 25 feet in length, a huge thing. The whale sharks feed on plankton and are quite harmless. And of course it was just cruising along, and I took these shots of it, as it's not always easy to get pictures like this. This one would have been 5 or 6 feet across the head, readily recognised by the white spots all over its back. Now Peter Wright is holding a suckerfish, a remora, which attaches itself to sharks. In this case we had put a marlin that we had caught the day before over the side, and we drifted out in the deep water, and very soon we had up to 20 sharks around the boat. At first they were somewhat shy, tentative, and then as soon as one or two had had a bite, the others joined in the feeding frenzy. Quite a remarkable sight. And from all the bits and pieces that were coming off, other pelagic fish were attracted. We caught quite a lot of bait fish at the same time. These are tiger sharks, and there were one or two in this school over 1,000 pounds, and this is a giant bronze whaler, about a 700 or 800 pounder, which is quite large for that species, and he is forcing his body weight down onto it so that he can get a good bite. This tiger shark is biting, and he shakes his head to get a cutting action in the flesh. This is quite a sight to see a whole school of sharks of quite large size feeding in this manner. You can see 3 or 4 quite close to the boat there, though you could hit them on the back and they would pay no attention. They were only intent on having some of the fish. You can see the small fish darting around, all types of tuna and other bait fish that we used for marlin bait. There's one swimming away with all the tail section of the marlin in his mouth. That was quite a large tiger shark. One of the crew wanted a jaw for his collection, and we put out a short bait and caught it so that he'd have at least one trophy. But all the rest of them we just looked at and let them go. This was a shot later on in this trip, and a similar occurrence with quite a number of sharks in a short time. Now, on this subsequent occasion, two very large tiger sharks appeared. One was at least 1,800 pounds in weight and the other 1,100 to 1,200 pounds. It was quite a clear day, and so we just watched them. It was like being in a giant aquarium with these huge sharks. Both of them could have been record fish, but for some reason we weren't intent on catching them, only watching them and photographing them. You can see they've got about a 700-pound marlin there, which we'd caught the previous day, and they just fed on it until there was very little left. See the two of them together there. In this case, the camera was put at the back of the boat, and sometimes only a matter of 2 or 3 feet from the shark's jaws. See his black eye there? As they feed in close, they will often close a white shutter across so that they don't damage the eye. Same applies to white sharks. They have the ability to protect the eye when they're feeding in circumstances where they could injure themselves. You'll see the feeding habits there. He shut his eye on that occasion. You'll see it periodically. There's a giant groper which came to catch some of the offal that was falling off from the marlin. There you can see the blood coming out through his gill slits where he'd been feeding on the flesh. This large one, the larger of the two, is the biggest tiger shark that I've ever seen. I've seen many white sharks over 2,000 pounds, but no tiger as big as that. We're now returning to Lizard Island. This is as the sun is setting. See another game fishing boat under the sun. Just see its see the superstructure there quite a unique shot. But late in this summer day, we were heading back at the end of our trip. And so the sun sinks in the west, as Fitzpatrick used to say, and thus is the end of our lovely trip. And finally in at the anchorage at Lizard Island, little Prince of Wales Island in the camera now, and a beautiful anchorage, beautiful holiday resort. Two of the larger ships getting water on the beach, and that is the end of our film.